November 29th, 2020 had a very somber yet hopeful feel to it. Things felt normal for once. Race day was a little bittersweet, with mid-table heroes Grosjean and Magnussen on the verge of leaving Haas, while Sebastian Vettel was all but confirmed to be ending his heartbreaking love affair with Ferrari leading into 2021. So once the red lights went out and the cars raced away into the first corner, nobody could have foreseen what would happen. Nobody had even considered the possibility that a driver would nearly be killed. As the camera showed the leaders racing away, something horrifying would unfold at the back, a crash so horrifying that even the cameras immediately turned away. The car had been split in two, and the worst part was, nobody knew who was in it. On qualifying day, Max Verstappen had teased the possibility of challenging Mercedes in Bahrain during the final practice session. However, when the crucial qualifying session arrived, it was the silver arrows that truly shone. Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion, asserted his dominance, clinching pole position in spectacular fashion. After the first runs in Q3, Verstappen managed to keep Hamilton's advantage within a mere 0.146 seconds, hinting at what could have been a closely fought battle. Yet Hamilton's final run left no one in any illusions, as he left his competitors in the dust. The Brit would go on to take an incredible 98th pole in his career. Hamilton's teammate, Valtteri Bottas, claimed the second spot on the grid. Nonetheless, their strong performances meant Mercedes locked out the front row for the 5th consecutive season in Bahrain, marking the 75th time in the team's history. Verstappen had to settle for 3rd place on the grid. He was followed by his Red Bull teammate Alex Albon, who matched his then best ever start. Sergio Perez of Racing Point managed to grab the 5th spot, marking his first appearance in Q3 since 2014. Daniel Ricciardo would slot in at 6th, and his teammate Esteban Ocon followed him in 7th. They were then followed by Pierre Gasly and Lando Norris. And in P10 we have Danny Kvyat. Once the lights went out, Hamilton and Verstappen got away well, but Valtteri Bottas struggled and dropped down 4 places. What followed was a very aggressive jostling for the positions behind, and the race would more or less stay normal for 2 more turns. The incident unfolded on the very first lap of the race, when one car veered widely across the stretch between turns 3 and 4. In a horrifying moment, that car had made contact with Danny Kvyat's oncoming car, sending him hurtling off the track and towards the barriers. The impact with the guardrail occurred at a shocking speed of about 119 miles per hour. What followed was a scene reminiscent of Formula One's darker history. This was not supposed to happen in this day and age. Had we learned nothing from Senna and Lauda, the car violently split in two and erupted in flames, a horrifying sight that hadn't been witnessed in over 3 decades. To compound the nightmare, the front half of the driver's car had become lodged between the guardrails lining that section of the track. And yet, miraculously, the man managed to escape. It was Grosjean. The Frenchman had walked out. And yet, perhaps more chilling than the fiery crash were the things that went through Romain Grosjean's head in those agonizing 28 seconds.
Initially, if I take through from that point, it's 28 seconds, but for me it looks more like 1 minute 30, and you will see through the explanation. So,
after confronting the possibility that he was in grave danger, the Frenchman tried to get out of his seat, only to realize it just wasn't possible.
And I said, no, I can't finish like this. I can't finish like this. I thought about Niki Lauda. To me, it's funny, it's the driver that I love the most to history of Formula One. And I said, no, I can't finish like Niki. I can't finish like this. It cannot be my last race. It cannot be my last race.
Lauda's accident was horrible. He'd been stuck in a burning car even longer than Grosjean had, so it was understandable that replayed through the Frenchman's head immediately.
I try again. I'm stuck. And then comes the part which is the less funny one. All my muscle relaxes. Almost not have a smile, but in peace with myself, thinking, I'm dead.
You have to remember, to the watching world, it was unclear who had slid into the barriers. Hamilton, who had been leading the race at the time of the incident, could only shake his head in disbelief as he watched a replay of the heart-stopping accident from inside the Mercedes garage. The Grand Prix had been brought to a standstill. And yet, a few minutes later, the broadcast cameras shifted their focus to a miracle. Romain Grosjean was out, but even escaping that hell had taken a lot out of him.
I cannot die today. For my kids, I cannot die. I've got to see them. And then I do it again, and I went through, and the shoulder went through, and at the time I knew the shoulder had passed the halo part. I was going to leave. You know, I know I've got 2 of my hands on the fire, on the halo. I can see my gloves. They're red normally. They start going full black, and I can feel the pain and the burn. But I'm going up, then I jump on the barrier, and then I feel Ian that pulls on my overall, and then that is an extraordinary feeling.
The man walking away on his own from the crash, albeit visibly in pain, was a reassuring sign. For the moment, at least, it seemed that the Frenchman had escaped without any serious injuries. With the immediate concern alleviated, the broadcast showed the nightmarish replays of the incident. Grosjean's Haas car had violently split apart upon impact. In a matter of moments, the medical car, which always trailed the field at the start of the race, arrived at the scene. Dr. Ian Roberts wasted no time. He charged towards the raging flames while marshals and Alain van der Merwe did their best to battle the fire with extinguishers. He later recounted that the fire extinguisher managed to push the flames back just enough for him to assist Grosjean over the remnants of the barrier. The ordeal left him with second-degree burns on his hands and some burns on his left foot. During the crash, every piece of safety equipment played its part in getting Grosjean out. And then there was the unsung hero, the halo. Amidst the burnt wreckage, the halo head protection system stood out, entirely intact. The halo was the reason Romain Grosjean was alive. F1's safety improvements had once again saved a life. The magnitude of the crash understandably cast a long shadow over the race itself. An agonizing delay of over an hour ensued while the track barriers were repaired, a period that must have been completely marked with restlessness for the other drivers. They were professionals, of course, trying to maintain their focus on the race, but it was impossible not to have their thoughts consumed by their colleague, who was then being airlifted to the hospital. A collective sigh of relief swept through the paddock later that evening when Grosjean himself posted an update on social media from his hospital bed.
Hello everyone, just wanted to say I am okay, well, sort of okay. Thank you very much for all the messages. I wasn't for the halo some years ago, but I think it's the greatest thing that we've brought to Formula 1, and without it I wouldn't be able to speak to you today. So.
The race, in all its anticipation, appeared to be cursed, as if it were destined to never truly begin. There would be more drama yet, another horrifying crash to be precise. As the cars restarted on lap 3 of 57, Bottas had managed to climb back to 4th after the chaos at the race's outset. Hamilton executed a clean getaway from pole position, with Bottas briefly challenging Perez and Verstappen ahead of him. It was a tight race, especially between the Red Bull and the Racing Point car, but soon enough, disaster struck again. Stroll and Kvyat collided at the turn 8 hairpin, the AlphaTauri car on the inside, causing Stroll's car to flip when it impacted the right rear of the Racing Point. Vettel was forced to slam on the brakes, and Kevin Magnussen broke his front wing as he collided with the suddenly slowing Ferrari. While Stroll remained stranded upside down, the safety car was deployed, and Mercedes had to pit Bottas after he picked up a puncture, which pushed him down from 4th to 16th as he rejoined the race on hard tyres. The race recommenced on lap 9, with Hamilton securing a 0.7 second lead over the line, nailing the final corner better than Verstappen as they returned to full racing speed. From that moment on, he remained in control. The Mercedes driver, who had already secured his 7th World Championship at the previous race in Turkey, now had an impressive 95 F1 race victories to his name. The Red Bull duo of Max Verstappen and Alex Albon secured the remaining spots on the podium. However, the 3rd place finish was cruelly denied to Racing Point's Sergio Perez, who suffered engine failure just 3 laps from the finish line. It was a devastating setback for Racing Point in their battle with McLaren and Renault for 3rd place in the championship standings. The race ultimately concluded behind the safety car, as it took a few additional laps to clear Perez's car from the side of the racetrack. Norris and Carlos Sainz advanced to 4th and 5th for McLaren. Gasly opted for a one-stop strategy and finished 5th, despite initially being overtaken by the 2 McLarens and appearing vulnerable to Ricciardo. Bottas, who had to valiantly battle back from a puncture, recovered to 8th place. Ocon came in 9th, and Leclerc rounded out the top 10. This hellish race had finally ended, and so the attention inevitably turned to what had gone wrong during Grosjean's crash. Subsequent investigations into the crash unveiled some critical details. The findings revealed that Grosjean's Haas was hurtling at an astonishing 150 miles per hour when it collided with Daniel Kvyat's AlphaTauri. Even after this initial impact, it lost just 31 miles per hour, which meant it was still racing at a startling 119 miles per hour when it ultimately met the formidable track barriers. This translated to a peak force that equated to a staggering 67 G. The investigation report shed light on the source of the fuel responsible for the dramatic fireball. The FIA, as part of its investigation into the fire in Grosjean's car, along with 18 other reports on significant accidents in 2020, identified various measures to enhance track safety. These included enhancing the fire resistance of drivers' gloves, given Grosjean's hand burns, developing cockpit fire extinguisher systems, supplying alternative fire extinguishers in emergency vehicles, and providing training for local firefighters at the circuits. What happened to Grosjean's Haas shouldn't have happened, and yet it happened. It really makes you realize how important it is that the FIA constantly stays on top of safety developments, that they're proactive and not just reactive. For the time being, their measures are doing a good job, at least in my opinion. But if you want to know more about a time when the FIA absolutely did not care about drivers' safety, look no further than this video.